Well, hello again to our viewers, and we want to welcome you to another program of Empower Health, the program where we empower you to improve your overall health and well-being. And I want to thank all those who continue to give us such positive comments about the program, those who have been following it from week to week. And, your comments are really well appreciated. And of course, do continue to be viewing. And for those of you who have been sending emails with various questions or comments and so on, I want to assure you, maybe you didn't hear a response on the program, but I'm sure that over time, because of Doc's busy schedule, we will get to you eventually in terms of passing on the information, maybe replying to the email as well. Or if there's something, Doc, that requires a substantive discussion.
Oh, we could bring it in. That's a good idea.
On the program.
Discuss some of the ones
that's right. That's
that
right.
we get.
Yeah.
Don't worry, audience, we will not call your names.
That's right. That's right. So again, we want to thank our viewers continuing to be, and that is why we do it, because there's so much appreciation out there for the information that is passed on on this program that we feel it really incumbent upon us to continue to to engage you in this manner. So last time around, and for the last two programs, we were looking at the whole mind, body, soul concept. And the connection between all of those, and as they relate, particularly because we relate everything back to our overall health and well-being, and looking at ways and means of improving our overall health. So we will pick it up from there, Doc, where we left off the last time.
We were talking about the nefesh,
yes,
right?
Yeah, we ended on that point.
And that it constituted, when you die, the 9 nights.
Yes, and that's why you have the 9 nights.
Yes, and that's why we started talking then about the 40 nights, because that represents the emotional body. And we said that is probably why Christ went in the desert for 40 days, and he got tempted emotionally. But essentially, putting it in a more down-to-earth perspective, you say, well, okay, how does that reflect? But in actual fact, the other day I was talking to one of my friends who I know from small, and I'm saying, of all the fellas that you went to school with, you notice that a lot of guys who you taught were very smart and very hook around with everything.
Yes.
That
weren't that smart after all.
They didn't end up going anywhere, and people who you kind of ignored seem to have gone on and do something of them for themselves. And so you couldn't really say that because the person did well in exams, that meant that they were going to do well in life. And that you have other inputs, and inputs like the emotional activities of the person, whether under pressure, if they would withstand the pressure and stand back against it, or whether they would break under the pressure, and what forms that. How do you know? And I think that when we watch a baby in a crib, and we never realize that the baby's learning things when we think that they're playing. If you look at a baby, the first thing I always say is you should look at a baby's breathing. And when the baby is breathing, you don't see the chest going. What you do is you see the stomach.
The way we breathe in primary school. the baby can teach us a thing or two.
The baby breathes, and all that happens is that the stomach moves.
That's right.
So you said, if it's anything, then that is probably the natural way to breathe.
Of course it is.
We'll get around to that breathing thing in a while. But I just mentioning it, that that's the natural way. And the baby lies in a crib, and at first it's just there, and it's looking for the bottle or the breast or whatsoever it is. And so the thing is food and poops, literally, and mother's hug. And there's a relationship between the mother and the baby, in that when the baby is put on the breast, and you see, that is never talked about, because we live in a very physical society. When a baby will normally have a heartbeat over 100, 120, because it's young and it's making stuff, so it's going at a rate. And if the mother picks up the baby and puts the baby to its breast, to her breast, to feed, what a lot of people don't know is that the baby's heart slows down to the speed of the mother's heart. So what you're saying is that the baby gets entrained into the mother's electromagnetic field. And so
And that is a subconscious or unconscious
that's
thing.
an unconscious thing,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
Most people don't even realize that.
Right.
The baby feels good, so that's why when a baby is angry or anything, and the mother picks it up, most of the times it will just stop crying. One of the ways of keeping a baby having a positive developmental life is that the mother is lying down on the bed, and what she does is take the baby and put the baby on top of her,
Yes,
and let the
yes.
baby just lie down
Yeah,
there. And the
yeah.
baby is in heaven, because the baby entrains into the mother's psyche. That helps to make the baby a much more positive baby. So if you look at children who are brought up where the mother is home, and the mother has time to feed the baby, and the baby
They
stays
create that connection
together
Yes, yeah.
whole day until they're 10 months,
Mhm.
that baby comes out much more confident of itself, much more self-assured in life, and in the Chinese system, they don't name the baby until the baby is about 10 months old or something like that. And that is because that is the point where the baby begins to recognize its name. Before it doesn't. So if you're going to name the baby when the baby has the ability to appreciate its name. That's a general
Yes, yes.
idea of it. So the baby lies in the crib, and you have all these things where you have all this stuff hanging in the crib, and the baby's doing that, and it can't make, and then one day it stretches out the hand and it hits it. And if it have different heights, as it somebody does, after a while it learns to push its hands up and pull the hand down. What you don't realize is that the baby is learning how to make space. Space is not something that you have. I once read a very fascinating book, and this guy was about 28 years old. He'd never seen in his life, and they looked and they realized it was a little thing on the eye that caused it, and that they could do it with a fairly straightforward operation. So they did the operation, bandaged him up, and then the day came when they took the bandage off. And when they took the bandage off and he looked, he could recognize people when they talked, but he couldn't tell that the door was over there and the person was standing here. Everything was flat. And the psychological problems that he had, trying to learn now depth perception.
Like depth of field, as
Yes,
you say.
because he had no depth of field.
Yes.
And that fascinated me because we accept depth of field as something that we have, not understanding that we had to construct it as a baby. However, the imprints of a baby are new. So it's very easy to print on it. It's like having something and you keep printing and rubbing off, printing and rubbing off. After a while, you can't print anything new on it. The thing is so destroyed. And the whole thing of the way how it develops a program based on the reality that we have. So we say, what nonsense you talking? You've had babies who got lost in the forest and wolves have taken them or other animals and minded them like the kid. And so they grow 9, 10 years old and they're running about thinking that they are deformed wolf. And they capture them and they bring them and you put them in a house. And what you have is total chaos. Because you cannot train that child at 10 years old to be a human being. It will go and curl up in the corner. Right?
Probably mash up everything in
because
in the house.
it has no perception of what is going on. And the way how it views things is different because it has been trained by the wolf in a different way. And so you begin to understand that those years when the mother has the baby, not only is she feeding the baby, but she's also forming the whole belief system of the baby. This is a chair. Climb up and sit on it. Right? This is the carpet. This is that. This is this. And there's a constant thing going on. And then the baby gets a little bit into talking, what is? What's this? What's this? And it builds references. So after a while you could say chair, plate, cup. So that whole thing and the whole structure around it builds its reality that makes it part of the human race. If anything else happens and it is outside that, it will build a reality totally different
yes,
that it
yes.
will not understand.
Yes.
So that sometimes you have a child and the child stays out, the child is 12 years old, and you try to bring it back into the society, it can't. It doesn't even learn to speak properly. Because it has a whole different language. It will run into a wolf pack and howl and do one or two things, and all the wolves would respond. But when it comes to the thing,
To interacting with the human species.
once it learns, it cannot unlearn.
Unlearn again.
Now, once you understand that, you begin to understand that it is very, very important as a parent to teach the child and to teach the child the structure very, very carefully. Of course, we do that, something, you know, I was listening to somebody and they says, oh, you know, my wife is always shouting at the baby. And I says, well, tell her not to do that. I was going down the road, one road many years ago in a car, and the mother had this little 3-year-old child standing in between her lap, and the child would say, what's that? And the mother would say, shut up. What's that? Shut up. What's that? Shut up. So I tell her, I says, ma'am, I don't normally interfere with people's business, but what you're doing is wrong. I say, a child is very inquisitive, and it is at the age where it is asking to learn. You are programming it not to learn. She says, what do you mean? I say, well, every time you tell it to shut up, you quell its curiosity.
Yes.
I say, when it goes to school and the teacher tries to teach it, it would not be interested.
Yes.
Because you have spent 2 years telling it to shut up.
That aspect of it. Yes.
You have programmed the child in the wrong way. And the woman says, she says, I'm sorry, I didn't even realize that was so. So we have this ignorance. Nobody teaches us the basics of, the basis of things. You know, it's like people who go to school and they learn stuff out of a book. You know, they go to school, they go to UE and they learn stuff out of a book. When they come out and they say, I'm an engineer. They're going to build bridges. And they don't know a nut and a bolt and how to put it together. Because nobody's taught them that. And you realize that what they have is a concept that is totally wrong.
Yes.
It's totally deluded from life. And they get out into life, and if they're not smart and go out and learn from the fellows who are doing it, what you're going to have is a totally incompetent man for the rest of his life, pretending to be a competent man. And so in everything that we have this training, and this training has to come, and it has to come in a way that will allow us to question things. And that your parents have to be very, very accommodating in this questioning. You know, they come and they say, what's that? What's that? I say, man, you have a really intelligent kid. Answer him. If you don't know the answer, tell him, I don't know the answer. When I go home, we will go and find it.
Yes.
And very quickly you teach him how to use the computer and go and look for that. Or if you have a book home, how to go and find the answer and how to read. So he gets accustomed to doing that. If you read to a child every night, you read a story. And when you read the story, it's the prince, and the prince have the sword, and go and he's going to rescue the princess. Then what you're doing is you're building the imaginative capacity of the child.
Yes.
And once you build the imaginative capacity of the child has the ability to do things that other children don't have. When I was small, I used to read plenty. I used to make a joke and say I read the whole of the San Fernando Kids Library, because I used to go with 4 or 5 books. And I didn't know that I had learned the art of speed reading. So I'd carry 2 books back the next day, and the chapter said, you didn't read them? And I say, yeah, ask me anything on any page, and I do it.
You're a prolific reader.
Yes, but in the process of doing that, I still am. In the process of doing that, when you're reading a story, what I didn't know I was doing is I was making pictures. Years later, I went to work at FedChem, and very quickly, I became very competent at running the plant. And somebody once asked me, and I said, well, how do you do that? You know, you just come here a couple of weeks, and you're on the console, and you could, I am the lowly operator.
Yes.
And the guy who ran it, because I said, Miss, come on and watch this for me. And he'd stand up and watch me going, shoot, shoot. And within 15 minutes, the plant, which running all over the place, will do so, shoot, and settle down. And he says, how you do that? And I say, first to begin, I'm listening. I'm listening to everything. this plant has a life, it has a hum. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the hum. Once I get the hum, everything will settle down.
Yeah.
For some reason, when everything is flowing in that way, I say, but there's another aspect to it too. I am literally seeing every part operating. You see what I mean? I say,
In your mind's eye.
yes.
Yes.
And then I remember that I used to work on the satellite station, and years later they called me about a problem. And I said, the guy, do this, do that, do that. And I used to go upstairs, I said, put your aerial in store and go on the top, and you'll find that it have a plastic mylar thing, and that is broken. And it was that. And he said, we've been looking for that for hours. How you knew that? You haven't worked here for 5 years or something like that. I said, well, it's still in my head. So I was fixing the plant, not by guess. I was literally walking through the plant and doing the things that I would do in order to find that.
Yeah.
And I never knew that other people couldn't do that. It's only later when he says, I can't do that. I said, what do you mean? I thought everybody did that. No, they don't. You know, so that I could operate the plant outside.
Yeah.
So it means that you have to train people to do that. Now that is very important, because if you're looking at health, the only way that you're going to stay healthy is you have to see yourself healthy.
Yes. You have to first visualize a healthy state.
Yeah. So,
both in body and mind.
So I am 8 years old, 9 years old. Don't go out in the rain and get wet, you know. You're going to get a cold.
Or a fever.
So I say, I tell my mother, I said, that doesn't make sense. She says, why? I said, why should human beings who live in on this earth, when they get wet, get a cold? That don't make sense. Behave yourself, boy. Don't be rude. But
put you in your place one time.
The rain would be falling.
Yes, and you would go out.
And she would see me coming up the road, walking, soaking wet. And of course, I'd get my backside cut.
Yes.
Right? And I tell her, I say, people don't get colds. And strange enough, I never got a cold. And I began to realize that suggestions are great for implanting sickness into your head or implanting attitudes that other people have. And I said, if that is the case, then what else do I have in my head that is wrong? And you begin to understand that inside that whole thing, the way how you're brought up decides the way what you believe.
That's right. That's right. This whole process of socialization, you know, and the things that you have been exposed to, the ideas, the beliefs, and that kind of thing that you've been exposed to forms your...
Another aspect is that conscious mind that is very malleable at that point, it's very easy for it to break and fragment. And if there are things that are done to that child when they're young, that is outside the scope of its creative construct and is destructive, it will break up that person's personality. It will break up that person, and for the rest of their life, they would stay broken. If you have somebody and they're beaten when they were small and shoved in a cupboard and slept in the dark, and while they were doing that, some music was playing on the radio. The music is totally unrelated to that, but it happened at the same time. Then that person is growing up, and they're going somewhere, and the radio starts to play that music, and immediately
all of the experiences come back.
Inside that dark cupboard with
yes.
all the fear and everything dumping on them, and they become totally illogical. And we don't know. You say, boy, that person is really funny. Sometimes they just go off.
A trip off.
Trip off.
Yes.
Right? So we all have things that we trip off on because of incidents that happened to us that were not nice. So that whole construct causes us to, you know, it's like this. You have a woman, and she grows up in a family where her father drinks, and he's come home and beat her mother. And she says, when I grow up, I'm not going to marry a man who will do that.
Yes.
But when the father is not beating the mother, he's also very nice to her. So she's going to go and ask him for something, and she gets it, and he sees that she's thinking, he might even sit down and help her with her homework. What she has in her head is a crazy mix-up.
Yeah.
So she goes out, and she looks for a man who is nice to her, who will help her, but has the same vibration as the father, because that part of the father she likes.
Yes.
And she marries him only to find that he's a drinker,
Yeah.
and he will beat her. And she says, well, how did I do that?
Mhm.
Because the male model that she has in his head is
In her
father
head,
dominant.
yeah, yes.
And she would divorce that man and she go and marry another man who would do the same thing. You see, how you keep doing that? You say you're not going to do it. It's because nobody sits down and gives her the ability to dismantle the model that she has
Yeah.
in her head and build another model in its place. In other words, everybody wishes to control our mind, so everybody gives us a piece of a belief system that would keep us in that belief
Yeah.
and not put it outside. So we never learn anything about how to change. In fact, most of the time, by the time we've gotten big, we don't want any change. Because
We
change
resist change.
frightens us.
Yeah. I think as we grow older, and maybe you can correct me, that I think our RC or resistance to change factor becomes greater.
Falls, flattens out.
Yeah.
Right? And so I don't want any change. And then if you couple that with, well, the boogeyman will come and get you. First, the boogeyman is live under your bed, or the boogeyman is come in the night. And when you get a little bigger and you can't do that, then you have Santa Claus and the boogeyman, right?
Yes,
Santa
yes.
Claus reward anything. And when you get a little bit bigger, they replace it with God and the devil. So you can't get
Either
away.
way, yes. Yeah.
All the life you
Yeah,
could
yes,
do.
yes, yeah.
Boop, boop.
You have a situation to suit every stage in your
Yes.
life.
So you begin to understand that lots of times when people have illnesses, the illnesses are not really illnesses. They're really shortcomings in the mind that create a certain state in the emotions and a certain state in
So
the
they're
body.
more psychosomatic than anything.
Yes. I would say that probably 50, 60, 70%
Yes.
of what we're doing is psychosomatic. How many times a person will come and sit down and say, Doc, I have a back pain, or I have a knee pain. So the other day I had a patient and they said, I have a knee pain. They said, what happened? I don't know, I just have a pain, you know, it's kind of stiff. It really is a funny kind of pain, but it's like when I get up to walk, I can't walk, can't go where I want to go. Now you hear what the person just says. When I go to walk, I can't go where I want to go.
Yes.
So I said, that's a very strange thing. And I looked at her and I said, you're not happy in your life, are you? She said, how you know that? I said, you want to be somebody. What do you want different? She said, I really want to study this. And I can't get to study it. It's like everything blocking me. It's like I can't go where I want to go. And you realize that she's saying the same thing for her achievements as she's saying for her knees. So I said, well, nothing wrong with your knees, you know. She said, what do you mean? I said, your knees is just a reflection
Of what's happening
of
here.
what is happening in your mind. I said, now, what about if you go and try to do it in evening classes? And she said, I never thought about that. Yeah. A couple of weeks passed, she said, you know, I get in to do the class, you know, I started doing it. I said, okay. So I saw her a couple of months later. I said, how are your knees? She said, what knees? I said, the pain you had in knees. She said, oh, that gone. You know. But so often when somebody has pain in the knees, we are you must have arthritis, you must that. When in actual fact it's probably not that at all. You know?
And that can hold true for any condition in your
Yes.
life. Any illness that many a times it might be you know, have its genesis
Yes.
in some
Yes.
psychosomatic condition.
I once went to Canton, Ohio. I was doing the security system on the central bank. So I went to do a course. So Saturday come and I decided I'd go into town.
Yeah.
And I used to like to go in jewelry shops. I still do. I like stones. I like to what.
Okay, okay.
So I'm going down the road.
Precious stone.
Yes. Please.
I just couldn't resist.
So the road is coming down there, and there's the piece of the road comes out, and there's a shop. So the shop looks right up and down the road, and it's a jewel shop. So I walk straight down the road, and I walk into the shop. And I walk into the shop, and there's a Jewish guy in the back of the thing. And he looks at me and he says, "You're not from here." I says, "How do you know that?"
Yeah.
I ain't dressed differently or nothing. He says, "You walk differently." I said, "What do you mean by that?" He said, well, he was coming down the road. He said, and the deputy sheriff was coming up the road. He says, and you was walking in the center of the pavement. He says, and you kept walking. And he kept waiting for you to move. He said, but you're not a mover. And you didn't move.
Yes.
And he stepped aside for you to pass.
Yes.
And when you stepped aside and he turned around, he took off his hat and he scratched his head and he looked at you and then he shook his head and he walked off. In other words, you were behaving different from the Negroes. So I laughed. I said, what do you mean? He said, go outside and watch and you will see that all the black people are
They will
around.
step aside.
No. They walk with their shoulders hunched over
yeah.
and their hands in the pocket at the side of the wall, trying to make themselves invisible.
Yeah.
And I said, I do believe that. He said, go and look. And I went outside, and sure enough, 9 out of 10 of the black people were doing that. I said, so you have to be from somewhere else. He said, because you own the road coming down the road. I said, you're damn right I own the road. I ain't moving aside for nobody. He says, that is it. I looked at him. He says, if he'd figured you was local, he probably would have tried to hassle you. I says, oh. He says, but you're dressed a little different. So he kind of just scratched his head. I said, you sit here and notice all that. He says, it's my role to see all that.
Yeah.
So he laughed, but he gave me an introduction. And then I realized, years later when I started doing medicine, that when somebody walks into you, and they walk into you and their chest is curved forward like that, and they have a slight hunch in the back, you know that that person has been battered when they were younger. They mightn't be battered physically, they might be battered emotionally or mentally,
Yes.
but they've been battered. And that fold in the chest is an attempt of the body to protect itself by pulling itself in like that. You know, and so you can tell a lot of things just by watching a person's posture, by watching the depth of their breathing.
Yes.
A person who has been battered, their breath is normally short. Their mind is agitated. Or other than that, it might be in a depressed state when the energy level around them is down. And then you say, well, how did that get switched on? And how are you going to switch it off? And obviously, the answer for it is not drugs. To drug that person, all you do is you're just putting them in an even more comatose state.
Yes.
You know?
In other words, it's not necessarily, the answer does not necessarily lie in pharmaceuticals.
No, it doesn't.
Yes.
Right?
Because if you say drugs, there may be some other connotation.
That too,
but
because all of them is drugs.
Yeah, well, that's it, and so, yes.
All of them is drugs, all of them affect the mind. Some of them are a little bit more,
They're mind altering.
Yes. So the whole thing that you have is that you have some sessions where you have good memories and you have bad memories.
Yeah.
You have good deeds and you have bad deeds. And what it does is it forms the conscious mind. And the conscious mind keeps its reality by carrying on a constant dialogue with you. Realize people are always talking to themselves? We're always talking to themselves.
Yeah.
I'd go down the road, boy. Can't be late, The boss will get vexed. I'm going to meet traffic. No, I ain't going to meet traffic. That dialogue is always going on. That dialogue creates and sustains your reality. So anytime you find anybody who's good at meditating, the first thing they have to teach you to do is how to stop that dialogue. Because if you don't stop that dialogue, you will never come to a realization of who you are outside of that construct that they have put you in. Church people will say, give me a person for the first 7 years of their life, and I have them for the rest of their life. Stay in the same environment, they're moving.
Yes.
They're right there. A couple of years ago, one of my friends who I grew up with died. He got into an accident. So they rang me and they said, hey, so-and-so died. So I said, all right, I'm coming down. So I canceled out all my patients and I went down to San Fernando. Went down to the Catholic Church. I was a good Catholic boy. I grew up there. The whole structure has changed a little bit. And I walked into the yard and I saw half the fellas that I went to school with, who I hadn't seen for 50 years. And so I'm standing up talking to them. Some I could identify. Some they had to tell me who they are,
Yes,
They've changed so much. And then I was standing and they had a whole set of girls, women. You
Yeah,
hear me?
women,
A whole set of girls.
yes.
Whole set of women standing across there. So I looked at them and
Well,
I
there
said,
were girls at one point.
and yeah, I said, all of them went to convent.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, how you know that? I said, they still have the convent thing. They're still behaving like
Yes.
16-year-old girls.
Convent girls, yes. Yes.
So we're standing up talking, and one of the girls came across.
Mm.
One of the women came
Yeah.
across. Two women in the 60s. And she says, excuse me, sir. She says, you're Jackie's brother.
Yes,
I
yes.
say, I tell you. they were exactly the same.
Yeah.
They hadn't changed.
Yes.
The whole posture,
Mhm.
the way how they talk, the way how they giggle among themselves,
Mhm.
from 50 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And that just blew me out of the water. I
Yes,
says,
yes.
boy, I suppose when you knock about, you get all kinds of influences and you change, and you don't even know that you're
You're
changing.
changing, yes. Yes.
So that is the mental and the emotional aspect that you have to deal with when you're dealing with health, in order to answer why it is that some people will give up easily when they're sick, and why it is some people will fight it. Why is it some people will get better, and why is it some people won't? You know.
And that's the impact that the belief system has on the theories of health. You know.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to watch it work. You know?
Yes.
I have a patient, she came and she says, well, they tell me I have breast cancer. I says, oh. She says, and I don't want to do nothing. I feel I could get rid of it. I want you to help me. I said, well, it have herbs that you could take that will take down lumps in the body. I don't know if it will take down a cancer lump, but let's try. And 4 weeks later, the lump that was that side had disappeared.
Disappeared.
Gone, you know, and all the little feelings on the little hand had gone. And I looked at it and I marveled. I said, she was sure that it would do that. And obviously it contradicted everything that we seem to know. I have a gentleman who comes to see me. He came to see me about 6 years ago. And he has liver cancer. And of course the prognosis was he ain't have long to live. So when he came,
And
he
that's
had,
what, about 6 years, you said?
yeah,
6
and he
years
had
ago?
this little lump here.
Yeah.
And I treated him for a couple of weeks with some herbs and needles and things, and he disappeared. And then I watched the file and I realized he came back a year later and I treated him for a week or two and he disappeared again. And that kind of recurred almost every year. So I'm looking at him and I say, you come and check me out every year for about a week or two. He says, yeah. He said, that's all the money I have. So we laughed about it.
Yes.
He says, and I still have the cancer, you know. So he said, feel. So I felt, and sure enough, the lump was still there. It hadn't grown any bigger. He says, once I decided it, me and it was all right, he says, we become friends, right? He said, and I was trained and I was eating. He says, and it's still there and it ain't going anywhere. And I remember some people saying sometimes that if you leave a cancer alone, that it will reach a certain size and it will develop a symbiosis with the body. It's when you start to attack it that it attacks back.
Yeah.
And I say, here I have a living case
Yes,
of a
yes,
person
yeah, yeah.
who is living with his cancer that is supposed to be a serious, deadly cancer and has not played the mind game. The mind
Yeah.
game is that you're going dead,
Yes.
you know? And I looked at him. Your patients sometimes teach you plenty. You know,
Of course,
If you look,
of
if you look
course,
at it,
yes,
you have
yes.
to be prepared to listen.
Yeah.
So when you see that, you say, hey, we go back to the old placebo thing. The belief system, what the person believes, how they believe it, how they approach life, you know, and what they do. And so you come down now and you come down to something more basic where you begin to talk about the actual physical aspects of the thing. We're going in. And you say, well, all right, you have germs, you have to kill the germs, and everybody pull out the antibiotics and I go. And then, being the reader that I am, I go dig out my book and I want to read about Pasteur. And I read about Pasteur and his germ theory. And then somebody said, well, if you're reading Pasteur, go read Bochat, who was Einstein's contemporary. And he was a man who advised people who were brewers how to get the right bacteria and everything.
For the yeast and so.
And Bochat is saying, it is not the disease that causes the problem, it is the terrain. He says, if I put yeast into a vat and I don't have the right terrain, the yeast will die.
Yes.
So it's not the yeast that is the problem, it is the terrain. So if I have a disease, in order to get rid of the disease, what I must do is have the right terrain. And Pasteur came along, he says, no. It's the one thing. The other thing he says is that it would appear that sometimes we have the ability, when we have the right terrain, that the disease is an attempt by the body to bring the body back in line. So that disease will form in the body. And it is really an attempt. So he says, for instance, if you're getting colds regularly, it could be because you have a lot of mucus in the body. What the colds will do, it in a funny way, is it helps to expel a tremendous amount of mucus out of the body. So in fact, the cold doesn't only cause you to get knocked down, it also heals the massive amount of mucus out of your body, because when you finish with the cold, there's no mucus left. I say, no, this is a whole totally different theory from the theory which it talks about.
Yeah.
And then you go along and they say, all right, if you have a disease, you have to find something to kill it. Well, the guy, I think his name was Fleming, who found out antibiotics, which was the mold that grows on things, that when you take it, that you can kill a certain bacteria inside you. What they didn't tell you, that it doesn't only kill the bacteria, it also kills other things.
Good gut bacteria.
And nobody paid attention to
Yes.
that. Or in fact, that's wrong. They started paying attention to it, and then like everything else, they just forgot. And what happened over a period of time is that amount of antibiotics started destroying the whole probiotic system of the body. Once you destroy the probiotic system of the body, you begin to get massive amount of fungi.
Yes.
When you begin to get massive amount of fungi, you begin to have other illnesses. So women begin to develop a lot of uterine problems, a lot of polyps, a lot of fibroids, fibrocystic breasts, and all these things have a basis in fungus. So you realize that we're doing one thing, but in doing one thing, we are creating a myriad of other problems. You know? So the whole theory of medicine, which is based on let's kill it, will have to change. If it doesn't change, what we will do?
We have to adopt a different approach.
We have to adopt a different approach.
Yes.
And we have to adopt the approach is, what is the terrain? You know, very rare you would find a doctor who would say, go home and build up your vitamins and your minerals.
Okay.
Now the way to do that is don't go and buy some B100 with all kind of fancy things in it. Go and get some brewer's yeast, go and get some stuff, go where you have natural stuff, and make a drink every morning and drink it, right? With juice and things like that, knowing that these things have natural vitamins. And watch the difference of what happens to you with that compared to if you was popping 2 pills a day.
Yeah.
And see it. Now, once you begin to understand that, we have to tread very carefully. The medicine that we have is excellent. It's excellent for certain things. But for other things, it might take away one thing,
Yes.
but cause a whole
deleterious
host of other problems. You know, I was listening to the television a couple of years ago, and it said that President Obama had given, I think it was $500 million towards the study of probiotics in the gut. He wants to know what is the DNA of each one, what each one does. And I said, you know what? Give it 10 years, and most of the drug companies are going to be selling you specific probiotics for certain types of diseases. And we're watching Downs and all these other syndromes coming in, and we're beginning to connect it up with the gut. You know, and when you look at that, you see, you cannot disconnect the energetics of the system, the emotions of the body, the terrain that you're in, the type of foods that you're eating, the nutrients, the stress that you're under, from each other. Because if you do that, you would look at the thing and all you will do is shift the disease from one place and put it somewhere else.
So outside the food and the stress and so on, what constitutes the terrain? And why is understanding the terrain so important
The terrain
Yeah,
is like
get
the joke we
captured.
had just now when I say
Yeah.
that a woman was married and she had 3 children and she was doing her job and she was doing her masters,
Yes, yes,
right?
yes.
And something else she was doing, and she couldn't understand
The
why
one you
she was
sent for
always
the
tired.
blue suit with the S on it.
Yes,
With
yes.
the S
say,
on the chest.
Go and get it. Go take out your blue suit and burn it. There are plenty people like that. So, and sometimes that whole terrain works like that. So your terrain is really your whole life.
Yeah.
What it does, why it does it, what you eat, how you eat it. And now we have another thing being introduced into that is food poisons. Within the last 50
That's
years,
become quite prevalent.
yeah, we have endless pesticides. I give you a joke about my partner who have a farm,
Yeah.
and he growing lettuce,
Yeah.
and he coming by me. So one day he tell me, say,
You ain't bringing that for you at all.
I ain't bring no lettuce for you. I said, I notice. He says, well, I know you're a man who very careful about your eat. He said, and in order for me to get my lettuce to the market, I just spray 6 different insecticide and pesticides on it in order to get it to market.
Yes.
He says, I don't eat it. So the whole growing of stuff has become so warped that the farmer doesn't recognize that, hey, sure, I'm selling the things, but I'm killing people.
Yeah.
I was in the market today, this week, on Thursday morning, and I see some nice silk figs. Oh, beautiful color. So I tell the guy, I says, I want a hand of that. He said, you can't eat that, you know, it's not ripe.
But it's looking ripe.
I said, okay. He says, I'm telling you, you can't eat it today. Eh? Don't try to eat it. I tell him, I say, I'm born in Trinidad. Right? And I know you force ripe the fig to put it here to sell it.
Yeah.
So I know how to carry it home and leave it for a few days
Yes.
and let the carbide leak out of it.
Leak out.
We should have a law against that. Because all that does is it poisons people.
Exactly. But people will continue to do it because there are no, well, I should say if there is, you know,
Now
or
listen,
there are,
my business is
probably
a,
not enforced.
it's a growth business.
Yes.
It's growing. It is going to get worse. You watch the rise of diabetes from 1 in 20,000 60 years ago right up to now 1 in 12 because of the things that we eat. I tell somebody, I says, do you realize that you go to the grocery and pay the grocer to make you sick? You have no respect for yourself. You have no respect for your health. So you go and get yourself sick. He says, I never looked at it that way. I said, well, how would you look at it? You know, how would you look at it? Where people say, well, I'm doing this and I'm taking this antibiotic for that and I'm taking that to that. And some of the doctors are guilty of that too, that anytime you have anything and you have a pain, give a painkiller and give some antibiotics and send you home.
Send you home. You got to go.
You know? So you have this whole thing where the only thing that is taken into consideration is how to get rid of the pain. And the pain must be physical, so I had to give you something physical. So if you have a back pain, the thing to do is to give you an injection and send you home with a bag of painkillers.
Yes.
So 6 years later, you still have the same pain, and you're still walking now with 3 bags of painkillers because the one you was using first don't work all the time. So you have 2 others to back it up.
Yes.
You know? So the whole idea is that if you're going to look at what you have to do, you have to look at the whole person. You know,
Got to take an holistic view of
yes.
of the,
Sometimes somebody comes to me and they have a certain, and I say, you're under plenty pressure.
Yeah.
And they say yes. You know. The other day I had a lady and she come in and she was really distraught. So I say, you're under plenty pressure, right? She say yes. So I kind of had an idea. So I reached in her hand, I'm a walking stick. She said, what's that for? I said, go and beat him. And she started to laugh. She said, so how you know that?
Yeah.
I said, well, if you have plenty pressure, and the main thing that it could be is your husband getting your thunder.
Yeah.
She said he's very, very illogical and very and she broke down and she started to cry. And I have my whole wad of tissues.
Yes.
So I handed her some and I say,
Yes.
let it out.
Yeah.
Let it out. And then when she finished, she said, that felt good. She says, you know how long I wanted to do that?
Yeah.
I said, good. Life is not only about pills. A good cry sometimes is better than all the pills in the
That's
world.
right, that's right.
I say you go home now and think about it very carefully, you know, and think about what you're doing and how you're doing it and how you try to think it. I can't think that,
Yes.
you know. I had a story. I'll give you a story. Nice story. I'm working in Novan in Miami. And I have this boss lady who is really kind of, don't cross me.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. No nonsense kind of.
No nonsense.
Yeah.
So now I go by her, you know, and I said, leave that as it is. That's a technical paper. Don't change it. If you change it, and a
It will
technical
teach us-
person read it,
yes,
they will
yes.
see that you
Mhm.
don't know what you're talking
Wasn't
about.
prepared,
And she'll
yeah.
change it.
Mhm.
So I just backed off. So we had this uneasy relationship, but she's the person who helps handle the FDA.
Mhm.
So, no, back off. So I'm sitting in my office one day and she comes in and she says, I would like to see you. I said, you busy? I said, no, I'm thinking. So I'm saying, I wonder what she want, boy. And she comes in and she closes the door and the key is in the door and she locks the door. I said, Jesus, boy, it look like I'm getting fired or something.
Yes.
So then she sits down, she says, this is not thing, this is personal. I says, oh? She says, well, you know on the grapevine that I've left my husband. I says, no. She says, well, I have. I said, well, go out in the corridor and you'll see the grapevine running. I said, but there are no water in this office, so the grapevine don't come in here. So I
yes.
don't know. She says, yes. She says, and I'm supposed to go at the end of the weekend. We're supposed to go down and sit down and spend a weekend together and talk about all the problems. So I have to write out all my problems, and he has to write out all his problems. And, you know, we have to put it together. I said, okay. She says, so I come to ask your advice. I said, you come to ask me my advice? She says, I said, why? She said, well, I always get the feeling that you're kind of like a man of the world. You knock about all over the place, and you know all kinds of
Yes,
things.
yes.
So I want to know what you think. So I said, you're serious? He said, I said, and you prepared to listen to what I have to
Yes,
say?
yes.
She said, yes. That's okay. I said, you're going down to the hotel by the sea. She said, it's a one bedroom with a double bed, with a queen bed. She said, yes. I said, that is an excellent choice.
Yeah.
You know what, you're sleeping in the another bedroom
Yeah.
next day. She said, no, that would cost too much. I said, good. She said, so what do you think I should do? I said, well, listen to my advice. I say you're going to drive down, it's going to take you a few hours to get there. So when you get there, you're going to register and you're going to go up to the room. And you'll have to get something to eat because it's late and you didn't get anything. She said, yes, that's true. I said, well, when you reach in the room, what I want you to do is I want you to take your suitcase and put it at the foot of the bed. I said, no, don't put it on top of the bed, put it on the ground at the
Yes.
foot of the bed. I said, and then tell your husband that you have to freshen up. I said, you want your husband back? She says, yeah. I said, then go into the bathroom and bathe. And then suddenly you remember that you have to get something in the suitcase. I said, so you're going to walk out with the towel and you're going to bend over to get what it is you want. In the process of bending over and looking for it, which is difficult to find, the towel is going to fall off. And you're going to be scrambling to put it back on. And you're going to be looking for the thing at the same time, very naturally.
Yeah.
I say, and 20 seconds later, within 20 seconds, you're going to feel a hand on your bum. I say, when you jump and go into bed, I say, and do everything that you want to do. Do everything that you never wanted to do. Do everything that you thought about and you wasn't brave enough. I say, and the only thing that you're going to stop for is to go to the bathroom, to bathe because the place smelling crazy. I say, and to order food. I say, and you're not going to see the sea.
Yeah.
She said, that is very strange advice. I don't know about that. I said, well, there's one good thing about the advice I'm giving you. She said, what is that? I said, you're going to have one hell of a time.
Yeah.
She says, I didn't think about that. You know. So she goes off. So the following Monday, I'm coming out of my car and she drives in, you know. And I pop, 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 pop. I'm coming by you in 5 minutes. But she's a very staid lady. So in fact, she blow the horn and everything.
Yeah.
So she comes across by me and she sits down. She says, I did what you said, you know. She says, it didn't take 20 seconds. She says, it took exactly 5. She said, and we were coming up the road on Sunday, and we realized that we hadn't even pulled the blinds to see the sea outside.
Yes.
She said, well, he drove down and I'm driving up, and he said, you know, we didn't discuss anything. And I say, yeah, I know. He says, yeah, I know too. He said, but we could do that anytime. And I said, yeah, we could do that anytime. We're driving up the road. She said, I reached by him. He's living in a flat. And he says, you in a hurry? She says, not particularly. He said, well, give me a few minutes. I have something to do. You know, just give me a few minutes. I'm coming back down to say something. And you go upstairs. She said, I'm waiting there. 5 minutes pass, 10 minutes pass. Start getting up tight. She said, about 12 minutes pass, I see him coming down the stairs, struggling with something. When you reach out in the yard, I realize it's a suitcase. She said,
I was going to say 2 suitcases.
You open the back and you want the other group quick. He said, throw it in the back seat. He says, I'm moving back home. Bang, bang. He said, now we could discuss all the other things any other time. She told me, she said, you know you shouldn't be a counselor. She said, all the other things you do didn't work. I said, well, you see, life is about togetherness. I said, and the one thing that the counselor was ignoring is togetherness. Once people get together and they get back that zap in life, everything
falls into place,
after. She said, I would have never thought that. She said, anyhow, thanks.
Very good.
You know? So it is that whole thing.
Did she treat you differently after
Definitely. You know, I was the holy man.
Yes, the guru, the go-to man.
And she'd always say, I would have never thought of it. You know?
Yes.
And I stopped and I thought about it. And I said, how funny that we get so disconnected from life. You know, and saying,
our reality.
I'm saying that because somebody came to me they tell me that they were separating, and I said, why? I said, go to Tobago for a weekend. She said, what, to go and discuss with her? And I said, no.
Discuss nothing.
No, discuss nothing. She said, well, I don't know if you'll want to go. I say, you as a woman don't know if you could get your man to go on a weekend. She said, no. I said, well, you're not a woman. She said, what do you mean? I said, if you can't control your man, something wrong. But it does put into perspective all what we're saying is that illness and sickness doesn't always reside in a pill.
That's right. Or the remedy thereof does not always
reside. Sometimes the remedies are very, very different from what you're saying. And the cure for it is a whole different attitude to life. You know, I'd go to somebody and say,
different attitude, different approach.
I have so and so and so. All right, and what you taking for it? Some pills the doctor gave me. What kind of pills? I don't know. How long you're supposed to use it? I don't know. I say, whose body you're living in? It's mine. I said, that's how you're treating it. You're taking stuff and putting in it that you don't know. You know? And I wanted to say something. I wanted to say something very, very carefully. And that is that for this last few weeks, you know, things happen in cycles. I have had I would say about 10 or 15 people have come to see me. And they've all had kidney problems. And they've all been diabetics. And they've all been using metformin. So I called some people in the States and I said, you know, I've heard, you know, they have side effects. And they said, no. When you're giving somebody metformin, you're supposed to keep an eye on them, especially if they look like they're going to have problems with their kidneys, and especially the sugar is running high and a little bit out of control. So I asked, I said, did the doctor tell you that this could happen? And they said, no. And I begin to realize that our doctors don't talk to their patients. They just treat them like if they're cattle. Does have any side effects? No. And then I have patients who would go on the web and check it and go back and confront the doctors, and then the doctors would get vexed. what I think we're not recognizing is that people are becoming smarter. They are becoming more knowledgeable because the web is giving us that facility.
Information, yes.
Long time, the only person who had that facility is the people who have the ability to buy the books to do that.
Yes.
Now you don't have to do that. The web is changing that. And they're not keeping abreast. So that I have a situation where I, being the alternative doctor, people only come to me
After they've
gone to them, and they don't want to do something.
Yeah.
And I'd say, well, what are you taking? And they'd pull out a bag of pills. And I'd say, okay, and we'd put out all the pills. And I'd say, oh, you're taking Cresto. No, I don't take that. I went on the web and read it, and when I see the side effects, I didn't do that at all. I rather stay with my high cholesterol, blood pressure. I start taking that and I get a dry cough and I was feeling bad and I ain't taking it no more. I'm drinking garlic tea. They will tell me that.
Yes.
They will tell me that.
Yeah.
And you watch that and you realize that out of the bag of pills that they have, they're throwing away. I keep saying this all the time and nobody's listening to me. They're throwing away 80% of what they're getting because there is no rapport between the doctors. And if there's anybody who's a doctor and listening to me and is part of the organization, the doctors, I think that they should sit down and talk about that and work up a way where they could have a better relationship with the doctor, patients. Because we're supposed to heal people, right? We're supposed to heal people. We're supposed to be able to communicate with them. And when you reach a situation where you're giving people medicine and they're throwing it away and pretending to you that they're taking it, then we have problems.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, what a massive waste of money that is.
That's right.
In terms of the purpose that we have.
Yes.
And it ain't going anywhere. And the fact that this week alone, I think I saw about 4 people that had kidney problems. All of them were diabetic and all of them were on metformin.
Yes.
And they were all taken off the metformin at the point where they found out that they had kidney problems.
Yes.
And then I check and I say, none of them had had any kidney studies since they've been on the metformin. And metformin tends to destroy the kidneys.
Yes.
So I said, I must say something about it.
Well, we hope, we will hope that the message gets through, But that's all the time that we have this week. It seems that, yet another program has gone by so quickly. But I noticed that there are a couple of topics that we have not touched, as the water and the breath and so on, as they relate to the whole mind and body. But we will continue that in a subsequent program.
Because people think that water is a very simple thing.
Yes.
Water has all kinds of different states. Even when you put a glass of water on the table, after a few minutes, it gets 2 or 3 different states right there.
Okay.
In how it aligns itself to the glass and things like that. Maybe we could spend some time talking
so that
about
could be a jumping off point for the next program. But in the meantime, we want to thank our viewers for joining us for yet another program of Empower Health. And of course, maybe it's a good time to remind viewers that we also have, you can have your own personalized copy, really packaged nicely, of our programs here at the office at Eastern Main Road in St. Augustine.
645-8625.
And 645-8625. You may call the office, and you can have your. We know that many of you have been requesting your personalized copies, and we do have them available now, so that you can look at them at your leisure. And of course, you'll have that as a repository of information as we move forward. Thank you very much for joining us, and we see you around for another program of Empower Health.
Thank you.